You guys, I was on NPR last week. So wild to listen to yourself on the radio. Let me play the segment for you.
If you're on TikTok, this might have popped up in your feed. The tradwives on TikTok.
I'm going to take you along on Saturday morning chores before the kids' games.
That's Hannah Nealman. She's become the face of the tradwife movement. That's short for traditional wife. Nearly 10 million people follow her Ballerina Farm account, where she posts about raising her 8 children on a farm with her husband. But now there is a wave of ex tradwives on social media. NPR's Isabella Gomez Sarmiento has this report.
Jenny Gage still remembers this assignment in kindergarten. What did she want to be when she grew up? She wrote she wanted to be president.
I brought it home, and instead of my mom being proud, she cried.
Gage says her mom was very traditional. She grew most of their food in their garden, stitched a lot of their clothes, and that day she told her,
Jenny, you're not going to be the president when you grow up. Your Heavenly Father made you to be a mommy.
Gage grew up in the Mormon Church. She got married young and she raised 5 kids.
I did all of the housekeeping, all of the cooking, the shopping, taking care of kids, getting them to all of their different sports and practices and school and homework.
But Gage says her relationship was also abusive. She left the church, and then she left her husband. She felt really isolated. And then she saw tradwives trending on TikTok.
The first time I ever saw Ballerina Farm, I didn't realize she was Mormon. I didn't realize she was rich. She just came up in my algorithm, and I had a visceral response. I was furious.
So Jenny Gage posted this.
I'm an ex-tradwife. I worked 3 minimum wage jobs to just pay my rent.
That video racked up over 1 million views. And Gage became one example of a new phenomenon. Ex-trad wives who try to de-influence the trad lifestyle. Historian Jacqueline Beatty says trad wives are not new, but they've become massively popular as more and more people feel burnt out in the workplace.
I think the pressure to do it all, to be this kind of high-powered career woman, but also have family, can be very exhausting.
So a lot of women see trad life as a way to opt out of the job market and embrace the home. But Beatty says historically, the glorification of traditional gender roles can push age-old stereotypes like
Women require protection, and because they require protection, that puts them in an unequal status, whether that's legal, social, cultural, economic.
I didn't think that I fit into that narrative at all. I wasn't oppressed. I chose this life.
That's Sharon Johnson, a mom of 6. Like Jenny Gage, she's part of a growing community swimming against the current of traditional values. She started posting on TikTok as a way to cope with leaving the Mormon Church. Then her husband got laid off from his job, and she says it broke their family dynamic wide open.
Both of us stopped having this pressure of these roles that we had to play.
He started taking on more responsibilities at home with the kids. She started working, monetizing her social media, co-hosting a podcast, and posting to her TikTok followers about how her life has changed for the better.
I am a completely different person than I was 3 years ago.
She says social media has given her a community. It's given her financial independence, and it's totally changed her marriage.
We are learning how to have more healthy relationships with not only each other, but with our kids.
Now, she describes her content as good enough parenting. They're not perfect, but they're trying their best. Isabella Gomez Sarmiento, NPR News.
I have to start by thanking Isabella. It was so incredible to engage in this conversation with her. And I'm just so grateful for how this little piece turned out and for the spotlight that she's shown on the lives of those of us who have left that tradwife life and are trying so hard to speak up about the pitfalls that it can possibly contain. Isabella was just so smart and sassy and compassionate and was just an absolute pleasure to work with. And I have to say, too, that being on NPR was so emotional for me. As you know, I've done documentaries and TV shows and interviews all around the world and back again. So this isn't my first rodeo, but I can remember driving in my granddad's Lincoln Town Car through Scottsdale, Arizona, when I was a very young girl, listening to him, listening to National Public Radio. It was something that I particularly enjoyed. He's the one who introduced it to me. I still listen to this day because my Scottsdale granddad had to have his NPR. So it was just a beautiful experience. This little segment made me really self reflect on what the hell am I thinking every single day when I turn on a camera in my room and shoot a video about blah, blah, blah. I used to be a Mormon tradwife and now I'm not. And it really took me back to that very first moment, standing alone in my bedroom when I had just gotten out of an online Zoom therapy session in the middle of COVID. And my trauma and abuse therapist was trying to deconstruct why I was so broke, why my life had fallen apart so severely after a divorce when so many of his clients were doing just fine financially and emotionally and physically and every other way where I wasn't doing okay. So we had just finished up this session and he was just blown away by the fact that I had been a stay-at-home mom for 24 years because my Mormon religion had commanded me to stay home. And as I had explained that to him, it just brought up so many thoughts and feelings in my mind. And I went home, turned on my camera, and did that first little 60-second video. I want to know why I'm unemployed and homeless because my Mormon stake president in 1995 told me it was time to phase me out of my business so that I could stay home and raise my brand new son, like Heavenly Father in the family proclamation that had been released that year had commanded me to do. And I don't really know what I was thinking would be the result of that. I just felt like there's got to be somebody else out there who's gone through the same thing. And I feel like I need to warn somebody. If like I was brand new to TikTok, it was like my very first video. And it's like if one person listens to this or 10 people listen to this, and instead my videos were reaching millions. And in the beginning, I didn't really have a purpose. It's like I just have to tell anybody who will listen that they better be careful if they're going to get married and stay home because this could happen to them. And I would share my divorce hearings and the amount of arrears that I had from alimony and child support. And I shared videos of homelessness and I shared videos of not being able to pay my rent. And I shared videos of not being able to buy that second jug of milk at the grocery store um, because I thought that it was really important to shine that light. And it was all just kind of willy nilly. I felt like I should do it. And so I did. And then a couple of years ago, I started researching women's history. And I realized a pattern back thousands and thousands of years of civilized human society of women being kept silent. Women in ancient Greece. I'm sorry, I don't know why I cry about this so much. The patriarchy pisses me off. Welcome to my page. Women in ancient Greece not being able to read or write because men didn't want them to be able to read or write and communicate with one another and didn't see any value in educating a subspecies. Women still today throughout parts of the world that aren't able to communicate with one another, that are brutally beaten by the Taliban if they attempt to get an education. Women not having a say in who they married, women not having a say and how they used their reproductive part, and women not being able to connect with one another and share their stories. For most of human history, women's voices have been silent because they could not read or write because they didn't have microphones. And as I read the history of females, for as much information that I could gather, I realized that I had something that was a gift beyond anything that I've ever been given before. And that is this little phone with this little microphone and people around the world who are influencing. And I am able, through my platform, to de-influence the patriarchal, Christian nationalist, white supremacist, trad wife, get married really young, pop out as many babies, let God be your birth control. The whole entire system that I was pushed into that nobody could warn me about because none of us were communicating with one another. I have a microphone. And every time I turn on my little camera in my bedroom or my living room or in the studio with Beth or wherever I am, I have one objective and one objective only. And that is to share the stories of the women who have been muted by history. I can't even share all of the stories of the women in my family, but by painting a picture of what happened to me, this one little blonde girl who grew up Mormon and got caught in that patriarchal machine, by sharing my story, I'm able to show people glimpses of my sister's story and my niece's story and my best friend's story and all of the women who have ever lived the life that I lived. And every day, like Isabella pointed out, I have the gift of de influencing, of being that little warning voice that everything you see in these pretty pictures with Ballerina Farm and Nora Smith and S.G. Williams and all the rest of them come at a price. These women are shield maidens for multi-hundred-billion-dollar religions and corporations and governments who really like the women to stay home and to sit down and shut up and get married and have babies and just make their home life smooth so the working men can go out and be in the military and build the corporations and keep our economy and everything going. And all of that has come at a great cost to women for tens of thousands of years. And it's no longer necessary. Somewhere in between blatant tradwife, patriarchal, white supremacist systems and woke feminists, 4Bs, the nuns who just shunned men altogether, somewhere in between these opposing viewpoints, there is a middle ground that many of us are living out right now today. And I hope that more of our daughters are able to land there. Let me end this video with this. A man is not a plan, never was, never should be. He can be your husband, your boyfriend, your lover, your bestie, the guy next door that you go to the movies with, whatever you want him to be. But we as a species do not do well when we are reliant on others for our sole existence. That puts us into subservience, slavery. We become pets. It's time for that to stop. And now for my favorite part, I'd love to hear what you think in the comments.